Everybody. I'm going to try not to mess up this microphone. My name is Corey Weddington. I've been actually living in Taiwan for the past 4 years. Ni hao. My Chinese is horrible. So this talk is going to be in English today. I have about a decade of experience in the WordPress world, and I've worn multiple hats at several different agencies. I started my career actually in design, and I absolutely hated showing designs to clients when I got into the industry. I would spend weeks obsessing over little details of a design only to show it to one of my clients and have them pick it apart and tell me, all the terrible things wrong with it. It was really soul crushing. So I kind of became obsessed with the psychology of trying to convince clients into agreeing to my designs or my ideas. This obsession ended up with me being in a strategy role, eventually getting out of design, thank God. And now a lot of my job is actually convincing people to say yes. It's usually yes to a lot of different big ideas. So today I'm going to talk about what I've learned in the last 10 years of trying to convince clients to say yes to different ideas. This is, could be design ideas, features, development stuff, strategy, anything else. It's going to be applicable to all of these things. So that being said, I would love to get a quick poll of who's in the room today. I know design was in the title for this, so I imagine there's some designers. Is there any designers in the audience today? Raise your hand. A few, 2, 3. How about developers? Any developers in the room? Okay, a few. What about marketing or account management? Great. Even more. Oh, wow, okay. So more marketing people in here. Great. You guys hopefully will like this. Again, this is going to be applicable to everybody. If you've ever had a client tell you that your great idea or the solution you came to them with was bad, or you couldn't get buy-in or you couldn't convince them, this is going to be a talk for you. So I'm sure this happened to a lot of you. You've spent weeks working on a design or a feature or some kind of deliverable, only for the client to come back and say they hate it. But here's the thing, it probably wasn't the idea. It was most likely how you delivered it. Clients don't usually, and I really say usually, reject good work because it's bad. They usually reject it because they weren't part of building it. And I'm going to say that again. They usually reject ideas because they were not part of building it. So what we're going to show you today is what that looks like. And before we get into the details of this, we're just going to go over some common scenarios that I've seen most likely popping up with freelancers, small agencies, or people trying to convince people to go with their idea. I see this one a lot. This is the email ambush, as I like to call it. You spend a few weeks mocking up a design, a feature, maybe a slide deck or a technical proposal, and you send it via email, and you say, let me know what you think. And like expected, it probably doesn't go too well about half the time. The trust me pitch is where you present a solution without showing any of your logic, and you tell them, hey, this is the best way to go about this. Just trust me and my experience. Or the open-ended question. So you ask clients, what do they think? Do you like this? And you invite a lot of subjective opinions instead of real strategic feedback, and then get flooded with endless revision rounds. So these are some of the common mistakes I often see, and we're going to try to address these along with many others in this presentation today. So all of these aren't presentation problems. Presentation problems usually look like bad slides, poor speaking, or unclear explanations. A lot of these problems that we encounter when a client says no to an idea are actually pre-work problems. So you're trying to build understanding, alignment, and trust all at once in a single email or even or a single meeting or even an email. And the reality is that's kind of impossible. So what's the solution? We're going to cover 2 main topics today that address this. The first is 3 conversations and how to overcome those conversations or those barriers. The next is the alignment ladder. This is a set of checkpoints that we're going to be going through with clients to get alignment and buy-in. So we're going to cover these 2 main subjects today. And we're going to start with the 3 conversations. So every time you're trying to convince a client of something, you're actually having 3 conversations at the same time. And you need to work to overcome these 3 conversations because they're the biggest barrier of rejection when you're dealing with clients. So the 3 parts of this is the logical conversation, which is, does this solve a problem? The political conversation, which is, whose turf is this? And the emotional conversation, which is, does this feel safe? So anytime you're talking to a client, you need to be aware of these 3 aspects and these 3 conversations and know how to deal with them. So that we're going to talk about that a little bit today. Let's jump into each of these specifically and just kind of highlight some of the details. So starting off with the logical conversation, this is the most obvious. This is the layer that most of us actually default to. I think after a year of freelancing, I started to kind of figure out that after getting rejected a bunch of times in design meetings or presentations, that I need to actually start coming with like some real data, some case studies, some information to show them why my idea was good. And this hits on that logical conversation. So we're trying to overcome that logical barrier, usually with data, case studies, facts, really being able to come to them and show them, hey, this is why my idea is right, and this is why. And usually it's the easiest conversation to overcome, to be honest, if you have that data. The second layer of the 3 conversations is the political conversation. Here's the reality. Even if you have the best idea, and it makes total sense, and you have the data to prove that it makes sense, it can still completely die if someone that is important feels surprised or left out or outshined. This is one that took me quite a while to figure out. And it's really easy to not notice this with small clients. If you're working with a single person, you probably won't encounter this political conversation. But as you start to work with bigger companies and more stakeholders are involved, it's something that you absolutely need to be aware of. Is there a marketing director that wasn't involved in your first 3 meetings that is now involved in reviewing whatever you're trying to present? Is there a business owner or a partner or even a developer that works with the company that isn't involved in this but could shut this whole thing down if they see it last minute? So these are the things that you need to be aware of. Who needs to feel ownership? Who needs to feel like they're building this thing that you're trying to present? And who's afraid of looking bad in front of their boss, most importantly? And third level, the third conversation is the emotional conversation. So this is honestly the most subtle and the most dangerous. Emotional hesitation is rarely voiced out loud, but it kills just as many ideas as bad logic or poor politics. It usually hides behind phrases like, I'm not so sure, or let's explore other options. But what it really means is this doesn't feel safe. If you can't make an idea feel safe to somebody, you're never going to get buy-in on it. So this is one of the most important layers of these 3 conversations is the emotional aspect, and it tends to be the hardest to overcome because there's no reasoning with it. It's just a feeling, and you can't express a feeling usually. So how do you overcome all 3 of these conversations? You can't win them all at once. Logic needs evidence and time to process. Politics needs a lot of pre-work and stakeholder alignment. Emotion needs trust, and that's built incrementally. Most people try to handle all 3 of these layers in a single presentation or an email or just a short meeting. And that's why these presentations fail. It's too much, too late. So that's where the alignment ladder comes in. So the alignment ladder is a system of checkpoints is the way that we think about these. You need to climb all 4 steps of these agreements. So whether you're pitching a design, a technical decision, a feature roadmap, or a project plan, or just about anything else, you want to keep these 4 main checkpoints in the alignment ladder in mind. We have our problem agreement, our approach agreement, our checkpoint agreement, and the presentation. Think of client buy-in like climbing a ladder. Each step makes the next one just a little bit easier, and if you skip one of these, you're going to fall off the ladder, and the whole thing falls apart. So step one is our problem agreement. So before you recommend anything, you need to get agreement on what the problem is. You need to know what the problem is to be able to solve it. If you don't agree that there's a problem and the client doesn't agree that there's a problem, they won't see whatever solution you're about to present is valuable, no matter how good it is. So you need to get them to articulate, and this is very important, in their own words. Don't put words in their mouth, in their own words, and then you need to document it. And when you agree on the problem, the solution becomes a lot more obvious. So this is one that a lot of people rush to, and I myself included. It's really easy to start looking at a project and start solutioning and finding out, hey, this is what I think is the problem, and here's how we fix it. So try to hold back from that and look at some of these questions that I like to ask in that first step. So one of the questions is, walk me through what's not working right now. You need to let them vent. You need to kind of play counselor, psychiatrist. Just let them talk about all the things that are frustrating them. And don't jump to trying to solve any of those problems just yet. Another question I love to ask is, what does success look like in 3 to 6 months? And get really specific. You know, if we had a team of 20 people and unlimited budget, what would our situation look like in 3 or 6 months? And have them paint a picture of what that looks like so that you can kind of push for more concrete outcomes instead of vague goals. So it's not, we have an amazing website. Our website's driving, X amount of revenue through, subscriptions or this or that. So again, really get them to say it in their own words and to be as specific as possible. The next one is, what happens if we don't solve this? Are you going to go out of business? Are you going to have to fire people? What does this look like if we can't fix this problem? This helps us establish urgency and helps us put a cost to inaction. And then lastly is priority ordering. So on a scale of 1 to 10, if they've listed out 4 or 5 different problems, have them go through each of these problems and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how high are each of these problems, so we understand what order they're in. It's easy to say a bunch of problems and not realize that some of them just don't really matter. And then really importantly, just repeat back everything that they've said to you. So just to confirm, we're solving X because of Y. Does this capture it? And document, document, document. So step 2 in the alignment ladder is our approach. So we've agreed on a problem. We now have a set of problems straight from the client's mouth. They could be design problems. They could be development problems. Every one of those is going to take an approach. So approaches have trade-offs. So it's your job to make them explicit. So if we do X, we gain Y, and we lose Z. Which matters more to you? So basically, this is our point to translate strategy into direction. This is when you present trade-offs and help them make informed decisions. So really here, we want to align on the direction and the approach we're going for this. So this is how we're going to solve this problem. Some of the questions I ask when we do this are usually, try to present at least 2 directions that we could go with. Let's show them the trade-offs, present them as not necessarily good versus bad, but it could be a trade-off of budget and time versus feature set. If we can prioritize X, we'll gain Y, but we lose Z. Which matters more to you? So another big thing here is this is kind of how we can dig into some of the political conversation. We'll go over this a little bit later, but who needs to weigh in on this direction before we build anything? This is a really good point to touch on that, especially when we're talking about direction and approach. So who needs to be involved in these decisions? And then just saying, so just to confirm, we're going with approach X because of this priority. The next step on the alignment ladder is the checkpoint agreement. So this is the biggest risk in the ladder. This is basically where we show them a little glimpse of what we've been working on. We want to be really explicit in what we're showing them and validating the structure and not the style yet. So for designers, this is low fidelity. For developers, this is very kind of high level conceptual mock-up of a feature or something else. This step is all about building familiarity incrementally. So we want to show them a little piece of it. Going back to what I said before, this is about making them feel involved in the build process. So some of the questions I asked for this is, does the structure support our user's primary goal? What worries us about this direction? And if we continue down this path, what would make you feel more confident? So again, trying to pull out some feedback specifically around the direction we're going, and not so much that minute details of, I want to change this color or change this font or something else. I'm going to have to speed a little bit through. I'm getting a 3-minute warning, so I'm going to kind of go a little bit faster the rest of this. I do apologize. So the last step is present. So by this time, you got here. You've already won, basically. The problem agreed upon, the approach chosen, the direction validated. At this point, it's really not persuasion. It's just confirmation. So you're not asking, do you like this? You're showing them, here's what we built together. This presentation is just a moment to connect all the dots together and all these things you've already built. And in that presentation, I almost always follow the same structure. So remember when we agreed on X, you talk about the problems that you agreed on. We decided to prioritize the approach because of the reasons, right? Tie it back to step 2. You saw the early direction and said their feedback, so you present that feedback that they originally brought up. And this is what it looks like. So your fully built out plan. And the big thing here is speaking to outcomes, not features. So this is how good ideas survive. So if you climb the ladder and presentations become more confirmation and not guarantees, it makes it a lot easier. Okay. So this is how it comes all together at a high level. So connecting our 3 conversations to our 4 steps of the alignment ladder. So step 1, identifying our problem agreement. Do we agree what's broken and why it matters? That's the logical conversation. So aligning on pain points, no solutions yet, just talking through problems only. Get them to say it in their own words and document it as much as possible. Moving to step 2, which is the approach agreement. So do we agree on the approach and the direction? And this is the logical and the political conversation that you're having. Surface any trade-offs and invite co-authorship. And make sure the right people are involved in the approach and agreeing what the approach should look like. Step 3 is our checkpoint agreement. Are we heading in the right direction? This is usually an emotional conversation, making them feel safe, show early, low fidelity work, frame feedback very carefully, and build on emotional safety. And then step 4 is presentation. So here's how it all falls together. Start to recap what's already been aligned, tie choices back to earlier steps, and address concerns with confidence. So the last part of this is you could do all of these steps and everything could go perfect, but you're still going to get no's. That's just the reality of our industry, no matter if you're in design, development, marketing, accounts. It's just going to happen. So your job is to figure out which one of these conversations went wrong, because it all boils down to missing the mark on one of these 3 conversations. So don't defend, why it went wrong. Diagnose. So was it a logical breakdown? Do they not believe your approach solves the problem? Should you be asking what kind of evidence do they need to convince them? Was there a political breakdown? Were the wrong stakeholders in the room? Did someone come in last minute and throw a wrench into everything, and actually they needed to be involved in earlier conversations? Or was there an emotional breakdown? Did they just not feel safe? Did they not feel like they could trust you? Is there more work to do? Do you need to work with this client more in smaller projects before you can convince them of this one thing? So having an understanding of these 3 layers of conversation is going to be really important to kind of diagnose where you went wrong. So your challenge, you have a pattern, we probably all do. Maybe you skip straight to solutions without a problem agreement. Maybe you work in isolation and don't have any real checkpoints. Maybe you avoid political conversations because they're too uncomfortable. So the challenge to you is to identify your pattern, and then on your next project, try to break it. If you have a conversation you usually skip, try to include that. Climb a step that you usually jump over. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Corey. 我们现在我们先帮他鼓掌一下，他好像蛮紧张的。谢谢大家。我们现在开放 Q&A， 因为时间的关系，我们开放2位。有没有问题想要问 Corey 的？
This one here.
Hi, I want to say thank you for your presentation since I also facing the same walls of science, almost the same experience, and I want to know if there are further references or do you have your own website that maybe provide more in-depth information. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Sadly, I don't. For this specific, I can make the slides available somewhere. Maybe I'll post a link to the slides on like LinkedIn or Twitter, something like that. But yeah, not too much extra information. A lot of this just came together for this talk, realizing that this is probably something that a lot of people deal with.
Hello. Nice talk. So I have questions. Since after you run through all the 4-step process, right? Then what if, let's say, the client didn't get back to you? Then what's your process? Like,
if they just don't respond?
Yeah.
Ooh. So yeah, I think if anything happens, right? So if they don't respond, if they don't agree, if you can't convince them, no matter what, it goes to those 3 layers of conversation, right? If they don't respond, I would say that's something emotional, right? You didn't build the trust somehow, you didn't make them feel safe. So that really comes down to that emotional part of the project of, if I had to identify a problem area, a no reply email would be that emotional part of that project, and figuring out how could we have made them feel more safe and more confident in working with us.
Thanks.
We can open for one more Q&A.
Hi, Corey. So my question is, have you ever encountered clients that who just don't have the patience to answer all the questions? Like, they just say like, hey, just give me a quote. Yeah. So what's the demography's difference from the clients that are willing to answer all the questions and those are not?
Yeah. So I think we can go back to those 3 conversations and identify, like, if we can overcome those 3 conversations and look at those 4 steps on the ladder, we don't necessarily need a meeting for everyone. Ideally, that would be great, but understanding some clients, they just want quick work, right? Maybe it doesn't need 4 meetings. I think you can overcome that, and as long as you break out those 4 steps into maybe they're different distinct emails or chat messages or something like that. Specifically, if it's like a quote thing of like, hey, just give me a quote before we start working, I think that's fine. It's fine to throw out a quote, a number, and everything else. For clients that are really busy, I try to preface like, hey, if this is a big thing and we want to do it right, these are the things that we need to talk about and the checkpoints that we need to go through. It doesn't need to be a big thing. It could be a 15-minute meeting just here or there, but making sure you're trying to check those off and then refer back to those 3 layers of conversation to make sure that, like, do we feel like they're emotionally invested? Are they feeling safe? Is there a political aspect, right? And just making sure you're checking those points.